the phone with us right now to really talk more about these Microsoft numbers is Rich Williams. He's an analyst with Cross Research based on data compiled by Bloomberg. Rich's recommendations have produced rates of return among the highest of anyone who covers Microsoft. So, Rich, perfect person to talk to. Your initial thoughts on their earnings release?
Well, so far it looks good to us. We were looking for above consensus top-line numbers and also better earnings, and we got both. It looks like the business division and server and tools both were strong. Essentially, we're looking for the beginnings of the corporate refresh cycle to show up in terms of actual deployments. A number of people have been thinking that this was going to happen earlier in 2010. Our thinking is that the real traction should show up next quarter, but we're hoping to see enough evidence this quarter to get a good fix on the timing.
Rich, it's Julie. What exactly do you look at to try and determine that? Is it the company's business division that you're focusing on? Is it going to be comments in the conference call? What are the indicators?
Usually, for our purposes, it'll come out of comments on the call. We'll hear it a little bit out of the server and tools division, also a little bit out of the business division, and then the client side will help us as well. So it's kind of putting together all the pieces.
I wonder what you think. Earlier we were talking about Seagate, and I made a mistaken comment comparing the discs that we saw to CDs or DVDs. Actually, they're the hard disk drives. A viewer writes in and says that's obviously a very key part of the computer, but Microsoft would like it to not be so key, right? They want to move a lot more of your storage to the cloud. Are you starting to see that in this quarter, or do you think that's something that picks up really next year?
Unfortunately, I've been unable to get Microsoft to give me any kind of quantitative feedback on the cloud. Azure, in particular, I think a lot of people would love to know even ballpark numbers. At this point, it's still too developmental, and they haven't come across with any kind of details. But
Rich, are you comfortable with that explanation from Microsoft?
Yeah, so far, because we think Azure could end up being as big a driver as perhaps the server division in time. It could be a very big area for Microsoft, and it's a bit ironic because I think from the perspective of an Apple investor, when you look at Microsoft, they seem like a big failure. We would strongly disagree with that characterization. Not only do we think Windows Phone 7 and especially Bing Mobile Search could have a very favorable impact over the next couple of years, but Azure itself could end up being a major growth driver.
Rich, I'm curious. There has been some recent press saying that Microsoft isn't a strong consumer company anymore. The products you talk about are obviously some of them consumer products. I mean, how important are they going to be going forward? Azure is more of a business product, but when you look at Bing, when you look at Connect, which is one of the new video game-related products, or when you look at the phone, I mean, how much of a portion of the revenue is that going to be going forward?
Well, we've done some estimates to try to come up with a feel for it. And Windows Phone 7, if they maximize the share capture potential and get Bing Mobile Search out there to as many users as possible, it could generate easily $5 to $7 billion in top-line revenues over maybe a 5-year period, and that's on the conservative side. And the margins would be even better because mobile search has got a very high operating margin.
Hey, Rich, thanks so much. We really appreciate it, everybody. We're talking to Rich Williams over at Cross Research, just breaking down those Microsoft earnings.